obviously we have some challenges ahead of us. I think they're working with the state and national national levels because we continue to be cut, and that's a difficult position to get into. But I think they made one tough decision in closing Lincoln. While I'd have loved to seen more community input with that, and maybe wait a year to get the local people more involved in that decision, that's been made. I can't do anything about it. But well, why don't we look at the administrative center? That's an area that I think we have a great deal of opportunity with. The school board president and superintendent talk about how we do have schools that have capacity. Why not blend the two? Close down the administrative center, blend it into a building that we already occupy and own, sell the building that that we currently are in for the administrative center, and move forward in that, and look at other cuts. Are we heavy in areas? Can we do some synergies in some of our administrative roles? There's a lot of things that and I'm sure they've looked at a lot of these. But again, we need communication with the community as well. So I think feedback from them is important as well.
It's a lot of things, and I think there's a big picture, and then there's the much finer detail here within La Crosse. And the big picture is that we do need to see state level funding restored. Over the past decade or so, that has been a real challenge, not just for our district, but for those around the state. At an even higher level, I would like to explore seeing school funding decoupled from property taxes. We have a lot of years of information that shows us that more affluent schools tend to get more affluent, and poorer schools tend to stay poor and to suffer as a result of that model. So I would certainly be open to seeing some kind of change that looks for more equitable division of resources to provide opportunity for all of our communities. That's the big picture. Here at home, we have our own things to really take care of, and I think finding redundancies and inefficiencies is always it's kind of a technical way of saying it, but my priorities in looking at how to right size the district's finances are in not reducing classroom opportunities and not reducing staff or faculty wherever possible. So that does mean taking a hard look at some of our facilities, and I couldn't say right now like which ones deserve or need to go, right? As I get out and talk to community members, what I'm hearing more and more is that people really don't want to see any more closures of our community schools. Those are really, really difficult times and difficult decisions, and I think it's important that we look at that. But the reality of the funding model is a difficult one, where the board continually has to gamble with these referendums on how much the community is willing to put forward to maintain all of the schools. And so ideally, I would like to see us be able to get out of that cycle where we're constantly gambling on how much funding is going to be available. And looking at some of our facilities might be necessary. But if that is the case, I think it's important that we look hard at how to accommodate families who are most affected to those changes. That if there is going to be pain felt, that it is felt equitably in the community. That we are looking at the needs of our most vulnerable populations first, I think. So yeah, it's a big picture view, but I think that's where I would start that conversation.
One of the things about me is that is just my diligence in trying to, finding out the solutions by digging into the real problem. Everybody likes to pinpoint what exactly is going on, and nobody really knows until you dig into it. One of the things that is always talked about is consolidation. Not a fan of consolidating, just because, the teachers and the students, they're all affected by it. So if we can, try not to do that, it's one of the major priorities. If I have to think about priorities for me running for school board. But obviously it's something that needs to be talked about because there's a lot of, money tied into these schools and they're all aging. But, digging into it in depth is something that you'll get from me. So, and trying to make the right decision.
I would really try to prioritize getting more money from the state. There's only so much you can do with that, though. I know the governor has proposed in the upcoming budget of increasing school funding quite a bit. It'd be nice. Of course, you're not sure what that's going to wind up. It's just the beginning of their process. That would be the best case scenario for us, just outside help.
So they've talked about consolidating the schools into one, and they've just decided to close Lincoln Middle School and consolidate those students into Logan Middle and Longfellow Middle. Ideally, I think they should really be considering long-term of moving 7th and 8th grade up into the high school level and selling off the 3 middle schools to property developers. Someone will want to buy the area. The locations are good. They're large enough to build on. And then pushing 6th grade back to the elementary level, that right there would get rid of quite a bit of maintenance and upkeep. And a lot of that staff could be absorbed to the high schools, the custodial staff, more students, maybe they'll move the custodial staff to those schools. By getting rid of the 3 middle schools and getting rid of the Hogan administration building, that right there would save a lot of money every year in cost, just in maintenance and just general maintenance, really.
I feel that the school board really needs to find a way to live within their means and live within the budget. My household wouldn't function if I overspent constantly. The taxpayers of La Crosse, I feel, are quite generous in the amount of taxes we do pay. We have done a few referendum to give the school district bigger budgets over the last, I think it was 4 to 6 years when I was doing some research. And they just kind of continue to bloat the budget and not take into consideration that these were temporary fixes. So as hard as it is, I really feel that we need to work on staying within our budget. Currently, I believe we have about $107 million budget, and right now we're forecasted to spend $109 million this year. So I feel that that's kind of the most important part.
Well, it would be nice if the state government would send some of that $7 billion surplus our way. La Crosse's share would be tens of millions of dollars based on our population. Ending the voucher scam would also help significantly. But considering who rules the state legislature right now, I don't expect either of those things to happen. So it's going to be up to us to solve our local problems. And the thing is, I don't know what those answers are. I have no experience running a large institution, 1,500 some employees, about 6,000 students. Like, this is a massive operation, top 10 city of La Crosse employer. I don't know how to run this organization. But also, if you look at the other people running, most of them don't either. So we're kind of on equal footing there. And what this sums up to is this is a really bad way to run a large institution. What I can say is that the number one impediment to solving the district's problems is the administration. Superintendent Engel, nothing personal, but he has failed at communication, and he's got to go. He should have resigned the day after the referendum was defeated. And he failed to communicate. He failed to reach out to various organizations. For example, parents groups, neighborhood associations, teachers groups, local governments. They all said he didn't talk to us. So, and then when they apparently haven't learned their lesson since the referendum, because they just spring this April referendum and the Lincoln closure on us, literally at the last second. I asked Engel in October to his face, can we put a referendum on the April ballot? And he said, oh, maybe. And, 2+ months later, he puts that on there. I don't know what he was doing for 2 months. I support the April referendum. I will take credit for coming up with the idea. I don't know, maybe I did. I have seen no evidence otherwise because Engel just doesn't communicate. So where we need to be starting is step 1, Engel's got to go, sorry. And step 2 is we bring in those organizations, not just give them a seat at the table, but make those organizations really the decision makers, right? Not just 9 random people who get elected. This is a radical restructuring of how the school district operates. And before we can discuss our problems, like, that's where we've got to start.
So I think there has to be some discussion about, there's been a reduction in state funding, which is what the entire operating referendum that's up for election this spring is about. I certainly support operating referendums. I was on the board when we created the first one, and the community supported it. But in that discussion, we told the community exactly what we're going to use the money for. The proposal that's out there now is just simply based on state cuts. And that's not a meaningful information, particularly since the day after the board voted on that operating referendum, the governor does a state of the state and says there's going to be more money for education. So I think we need an open, honest discussion with the public about our finances. There have been reductions in funding because there's been reductions in students in the district. And have we made cuts according to that? When you have fewer students, how many staff do you need? And I think that that's an important discussion to have. And I don't know that that discussion is going on. In fact, the superintendent, the night that the referendum was voted on, talked about this referendum providing more services than has ever been provided before, and providing funding at a level it had been a number of years ago when there were more students. And so I think we need to have a meaningful conversation about who are our students, what are their needs, how many are there, and what's the appropriate staffing level, and what are the appropriate services the district should be.
So I looked through the budget. I spent a wonderful Sunday afternoon reviewing the budget, and bulk of the, like any business, the bulk of the expenses is people, buildings and facilities next, and then programming and everything else. So, but if you look at the gap from 2013, it basically almost halved. It's actually more than halved the actual state funding that came in. So right now, the community, our property taxes is what's funding the current gap. So it's, yeah, there are issues. There's areas we're going to have to look at to make sure we're optimizing facilities and we're giving good programming and we're doing all those things. But it's not really a cutting issue, in my opinion. It's a funding issue that we really have to focus on and focus on what the community wants.